When the subject of racism and whiteness comes up, do you feel threatened? Do you feel defensive? Do you wonder what this is all about? Do you feel like, what am I missing? This episode today with Curtrice Goddard is about collaborating with each other to release the whiteness matrix and the role that all of us play inside that matrix to disempower each other and ourselves so that we can have a collective liberation. And so tune in today and learn something that could change the entire game for you. Join us to find out more.
Soul Nectar Show, the Soul Nectar Show. You're invited, delighted to discover who you are. Anything is possible if you believe. So join us on this beautiful journey. Soul Nectar Show, Soul Nectar Show.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Soul Nectar Show, that show where we talk about all things essence, where we gather around the campfire and we share our stories of connection to that which is greater than us, to the big mystery beyond the veil, to those synchronistic moments that lead us inexorably towards a different understanding of life, a new perspective, an expanded view of what this human existence is all about through our unique filters in our bodies and our ancestries. And I'm your host, Carrie Hummingbird. And I love having these conversations week after week to shed some light, some illumination on what we are feeling together collectively, what we are witnessing, and to give some support to how do we navigate it? How do we make sense of it? How do we move through it? And where's our agency? Where is the place that we can contribute or influence the unfolding of what we see before us? And where's the place where we simply move into acceptance? And it's a little skinny branch. So sometimes figuring that out takes some deep witnessing and some contemplation and some feeling it to heal it. And, we're working at so many levels right now, and the collective is going through just amazing depths of witnessing of the underlying hidden matrix that has been directing so much of the flow of human interaction for a very long time, generations and generations and generations. And now it is no longer invisible. It's quite visible. It's quite in our face. And I'm reminded of, some of the teachings from the Bible for those who can see and those who can hear. And I'm seeing and I'm hearing a lot and I'm witnessing a lot. I know that if you're tuned into Soul Nectar Show, so are you. And in that witnessing, we are witnessing things that have always been there, and yet were invisible to us. And now they're not so invisible. They're more visible. And we could be feeling a lot of trigger around that. We could be feeling judgment. We could feeling righteous rage. We could be, wanting to get up in arms. We could also just be frozen like a deer in the headlights, like unblinking. Am I really seeing what I'm seeing? Wow. And for those of us who have been invested in aspects of witnessing the matrix and its underlying tenets for a while, are kind of like, yep, there's that thing. Yep. And there's that. And we've been talking about this now for a very long time. And we're kind of like, yep, there it is. More people are seeing it. And it's an opportunity. So it's also could be very stressful. And so our intention with this call, and I'm going to introduce you to my awesome guest, intention with this call is really collective liberation, is really helping to identify what exactly is the matrix. And I'm going to add in the word whiteness, because the matrix is based on this idea, this construct of whiteness. And it's not even a real thing. And yet it has been given a lot of power by all of us over the last several hundred years. Many generations, 7 generations, 8 generations, 10 generations, many generations have had this as a belief system. It's this idea that one group of people would set the culture for everybody to follow, the language, the expression, the rules, the ladder of who's worthy, who's not worthy, all of these things built into this matrix. And we all were indoctrinated into it from our different bodies. And so this matrix, when we release it, we will have a collective liberation as we each do the work to release it, take our energy out of it. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And so I brought in the best person I know to have this conversation with. There really is nobody else that I could think of that I would have this conversation with except Curtrice Goddard. Welcome, Curtrice, to the show. So grateful to have you here. And, you know, Curtrice, you guys remember a few years back, she was on Soul Nectar Show, and we even initiated some programming around, hey, come study with us. Let's do this. Let's release this matrix. Let's do this DEI work that everyone's like, oh, DEI, you know, and there's like labels about it now. And what it really just means is everybody's equal. Everybody's important. Everybody has a voice. Everybody has energy. Everybody, you know, and we got to see that and release the structures within us that would prevent that. And so here Curtrice is again. She is a mentor. She's a bridge builder. She connects the realms of personal transformation, spiritual growth, and social justice. And her approach is both radical and nurturing, challenging individuals and organizations to heal at the deepest levels of consciousness, recognize our interconnectedness, and develop regenerative models of leadership and community. And this is all about sustainability. This is all about coming back to the earth, remembering who we are in truth. Rainbow children, rainbow people. Let's get with it. Okay. So stay with us for this conversation. If you're uncomfortable already, take a deep breath. Welcome, Curtrice.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It is an honor to be here. I'm so glad you reached out and just really appreciate our connection. And when we align, it's like, it's just that we're such a reflection of one another, and it's really powerful. So thank you.
I'm so glad to have you here. And, you know, I know that your commitment is very deep to creating safe transformational spaces for healing and for also challenging those systemic barriers, right? So not just kind of putting up with it and letting it stay there, but like challenging it with compassion, with insight in a different way that opens hearts and minds. And I think that's what we need right now to move into a deeper level of deconditioning and divesting our energies, right? Divesting is a word that's used a lot, taking our energy out of these systems that disempower.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because what we are experiencing now as a collective with the new administration, just this time on earth, things that are happening most spiritually and energetically, as well as in the physical plane, I feel, and this is just what I sense, a lot of confusion in terms of what I stand for, my values, and balancing that with the primal desires and needs of the world. And so it's really a deep invitation and something that's coming right off for me, like you said, collective liberation. And we talk about how do we get to this unified place together, right? This is where we all know we should be. And then what does that path look like? But I'm aware of now that to move into this space, some of the basic foundational pieces is starting with empowered human beings. And that is also what anti-racism seeks to develop in people, not to just sit and say, you're wrong, and they did this and that. And sometimes it can feel like that, or maybe it even takes a tone like that. But what's really happening is that we're coming to retrieve our power back from a system. And so, although it feels very personal, it's more of a systemic, deeper call to us all cultivating and connecting with our higher selves and our higher expression, right? The more racist program that we all excavate outside of ourselves, the more we are who we truly are. And that's a powerful, impactful, loving, compassionate human being who understands and can feel that abundance is real, that you can be innovative and create enough for everyone. And when we don't do this work, we go back into darkness, which is all survival, which is all there's not enough. And so in that is when we start to become divisive, because I'm thinking you're taking from me, or if you get this job, I can't have a job. We both can't eat, right? And it really starts to trigger some of those survival tendencies. And when you look out into the world now, you can see that that's really inflamed right now. A lot of distorted primal energy. And we want to not be in that state. We want to reclaim our truth and sit in a place that is compassionate, abundant, innovative, right? Who knows we can create solutions and that we don't have to fight that's a lie. That's almost like blasphemy, right? Like we do not have to fight to eat. This is part of the system that has put all this pressure in the field to make you feel like you don't have enough or there is not enough for everyone. So yeah, it's pretty intense out here in that respect. Wait, something else is coming in right quick, Carrie, too, around in my containers. That's what I want to share as you are opening up. I always invite people to come in and just sit into the realization that when we were all born into this society, we had no idea what we were being born into. I didn't know that I would be in a Black body. I didn't know what that would mean to the society. You didn't know you would be in a white body and what that would mean to society, a male, whatever gender. We didn't know these things. And there's an innocence in that. There's an innocence for all, right? And when we understand that, when we move through around racism and separation consciousness, if we remember that when we're interacting with people, when we're talking online, when you're talking to your family, remember that you get to be the invitation to a new perspective and that we don't need to condemn people because of the program and the indoctrination that we've all suffered on this earth. And now that we're now detangling, which is an honor to even have the know-how, desire, and guidance to do detangling work, right? To move into that. But I always say, let's keep that piece of knowing, we didn't wake up and everybody was a 40-year-old white man. You know what I mean? Like, what about when I was a 3-month-old baby who had no idea what this program would tell it or how it will cultivate that experience? And so I aim to be an invitation to speak what is my righteous truth, but also to hold people in a place of non-condemnation, right? And that helps when people can feel that. Sometimes you can deliver things that are really uncomfortable while they're all also simultaneously feeling held by you.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's the pattern, not the person. And it's the inheritance that we all inherited from our ancestors who have been doing this for generations and, at least 7 generations in this country alone, probably more like 9 or 10. Mm-hmm. And so when you have that much momentum behind something and that much conditioning and all the associated trauma from it, from the ancestry, and we're not separate from that because we inherit all of that ancestral DNA in our bodies. And so in our bodies is this information, right? And it's palpable when the topic comes up. People's bodies respond to what we're talking about and activating within their body. No matter what skin you're in, you're getting activated when we bring up this topic. And yes, it can feel really uncomfortable because of that activation. And what I just really invite everyone to realize is that it's so powerful to activate it, to your ability to be present with it, because the more you can be present with the activation, knowing that it's not about you, it is happening in you and through you. And as you bring your love to that and your presence to the experience, you're actually helping to heal many generations of ancestors and much trauma that actually keeps this whole thing in place. It's when we actually dismantle the energies and we let them dissolve through love that we get liberated from it. It's not through the bypassing of it or the trying to escape it or living from the throat up because I don't want to feel like what's down in my heart and my womb and my belly and all of that. I don't want to know that. If we avoid it, we're never going to move through it. And so it's important that each of us, I think, does our part to embody true love. With the only way through is to clear the hucha, the heavy energy, to bring back Sami. I'm using these terms, hucha and Sami, from my indigenous lineage in Peru, the Caro. They say there's really only 2 types of energy. There's hucha and there's Sami. Hucha is heavy energy. It's dense energy. It's negative. We classify it. And it's based in traumas and too much thinking and emotions and, all the things, all the ancestral inheritances that have not been cleared and healed. And Sami is the pure energy of nature. It's that nature operates in Sami all the time. And so we can return ourselves to connection with nature by being willing to heal the hucha and restore ourselves to balance and right relationship.
Yes, yes. It's interesting you said that. And there's something I've been wanting to share online. And you just gave me that invitation around the 7 generations. I am the 7th generation from my enslaved grandmother. And I found that out more recent. And my mother always talks about her grandmother, how she took care of her, how she would walk home. She used to clean up for white people, and she stayed for a year for 50 cents to buy a dictionary because, she couldn't learn at that time. And she calls her mama. And one day I said, "Who was mama's mama?" And my mother said, "I don't know." And the deepest trigger went off. I was like, "What do you mean you don't know? What do you mean you don't know?" I just started, like, "What do you mean?" It was such a visceral feeling coming through. So I start to research and look back and look at her age and where she was living in the South in 1855. And I was like, oh my goodness, right? And so counting the generations, when you say that, because like this leads like into DEI when it relates to the African diaspora, like, Black people in America. When I think about that enslaved grandmother, that uneducated woman that is beat down physically, mentally, emotionally, and then her child, which is mama, then my mother's great grandmother, and how she was also uneducated, and how to even get an education, people would bite you or throw things, or you can be killed trying to go to school, or if you were caught reading, and she's like saving for this dictionary. And thinking about this consciousness, right, and this mindset are raising children. And then comes my grandmother. And again, uneducated, having babies young. Every one of them were teenage mothers, from the one who was the enslaved grandmother, mama, my grandmother, my mother, my sister, and then me, who stopped it. And I didn't really understand, like, I didn't have the words for intergenerational trauma. I just knew growing up, I would always say, "I'm not your baby mama. Don't talk to me like that. I'm not your baby mama. I'm your wife." Like, and I would say these and like, ha ha. But there was something, I feel like, just a spiritual inclination to wanting to, I guess, stop a curse in a way. And although I think children coming through are a blessing, because I don't have children, and I really have the contrast of that. But I was very intent on not being a teenage mother. And so I say that to say, when you are born with people with this level of trauma who don't know that I need to furnish my children in a way to go to college, or that that's even possible, or that is even safe. And when you get to this point, say I had children and never left my neighborhood, never built anything for myself. That was one of the paths I was on. I was 1 foot in and 1 foot out, right? I'm in the neighborhood. I'm doing the patterns of in my neighborhood. And you think about DEI, that's what that is for, to repair these lineages that has been disrupted to this extent. That could very well, I could have 3 kids before I'm 21 and be raising them now and stuck in a cycle. So is that repair always money? Should be, could be, but it's also the mental health, the emotional healing that is required. And when we start to debate about DEI, it brings up a deep piece for people in white bodies, because it goes into the space of, if you don't look at the need for repair for this demographic of people that has been abused and has continual trauma nowadays, like things are still happening, then what is happening, you are not looking back at an entire part of the history. Like, people who say we don't need DEI, including the current president of the country, are ignoring history. That's the only way. Reverse racism means that, and I would love to hear somebody really talk about that to me. That is coming up because you don't either know the history, or you're choosing not to see the history, that you don't know that these people were held back, that there were systems in place, that we couldn't buy homes, that our towns and our houses were burnt down to the ground. Like, there was a literal stop to our progression. And so the honorable thing would be to regenerate, to repair. That's what reparations is, to repair, to care, to come back and say, "Ooh, oh, okay, I see." But that what comes up in a lot of people, and this is what you said about the matrix, is the survival. People see that as an attack on their position or who they are, because they're operating in this survival mindset, that even if they were to look back at history and learn that, oh, there were some intentional systems, then they have to start looking at what they have cultivated as their identity, right? Because in this society, not only this country, if being white means you're right and hardworking and pure and clean and perfect, if you were to go back and start to excavate, dig up some things and it doesn't say that, then you have to start to question your identity. And what does this mean? And am I still a good person? And of course you are, if you are, right? You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
right. So there's such deep medicine in that. And so it's not as simple as telling people, I always say, and I wrote that down, safe spaces for white people are also needed if we're going to do like a deep work where can come in and say, okay, this is going to be hard. This is going to be something that really could potentially destabilize you. But once you move through it, who do you become? You get to actually go back. And if you do enough work to opt out of whiteness and actually go back to your bloodline, to your heritage, and go find out your true roots and connect to that, which I feel is so liberating. I tell my sisters who happen to be in white bodies that is where all the juiciness is, the creativity and the culture and the rituals is in where you really come from as a European and not what was co-opted as a system here on this land.
And yes, I hear you totally. I love everything you just shared. And I just want to contribute that what I've noticed from the white body is that there can be a lot of shame when we first realize our ancestors' participation in enslaving people for generations, for like 300 years, So when in a white body, you realize that you look up because ancestry.com and all these places have gotten really popular, right? And so people have become aware of their ancestral line. And when you see that someone in your ancestral line was involved in enslaving people, you get this like icky feeling inside, which can make you not want to connect with your ancestors or be angry with them for what they did or feel like, what do I do with this? What can I do with this? And that's a sticky part. I've had some students that, and myself included in my ancestry, were not the plantation owner, but were there participating and supporting the system, right? And then in this case, someone who actually had people involved in the Confederacy and people, right? So family. So the idea of family gets so complicated because it's somebody that you want to be able to really fully love. And yet they've done these horrible things that now, generations later, we can see are not aligned with any kind of love. It's like the opposite of love. It's hate. It's repulsive. And to have that part of you, because it's part of your ancestry, that is really challenging to feel that and to embody that. So I think that's why a lot of people avoid this conversation because their body does an immediate, like, I don't want to know that. And they get that sort of like what happened at the Super Bowl, with the halftime show with Kendrick Lamar and all these people in white bodies are like, that's boring. That's not, made for me and I'm not interested and I'm not going to lean in to understand that because it's a disconnect. There's something big there that I don't want to feel in my body. I don't want to acknowledge.
See, that's the part of white people taking their power back. And, I'm saying risque things like white people in power, like, girl, what? But it really is because the disconnect and the shame is there, whether we ever talk about racism at all. And it impacts the culture. It impacts the children. It impacts the amount of drug use that's in the white community, which is tons. I don't know. I have a huge network of white, that. All of them have done drugs in their life. I can't say that for the Black community, even though that's the narrative. I mean, you're married to a Black, you know what I mean? So there's a lot of we didn't come up that like drugs were a serious thing. It was the crackheads. It was not something you do recreationally. We have enough recreation just trying to walk home from school to your house, right? So because of the system, it's like white people or all people are not able to see just how it has been impacting people in white bodies. And it's just really deep to see how I feel like the children, of course, the younger generation is more breaking out. They don't want to be in this supremacy culture. They don't want to be just white. They're like, wait a minute, I'm a human being. I have ideas. I want to be passionate. I want to be all these things. What is this order you're telling me to follow? What is this? Right? And so they're here, they're the liberation crew. And I feel like even like you said with your students, and I've had that in classes that I've taught too, when that shame comes up, you move through that because you are the cycle breaker. You go and say, wait, my parents owned what? Or my grandparents, or I was a part of what? I'm about to liberate minds. But it takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of community. we're out here on these outskirts because I have documentary with forget this one guy. I wish I knew it. I could share in case you want to like link that somewhere here. But he found out his grandmother would tell him, we had slaves and we're so good to them and we let them go. They came back. And he said he did research. He's like, none of that was true. Grandma, but he ended up creating a huge foundation and documentaries. That shame empowered that man, opened his heart. He went deep into conversations. He's created a legacy. So that's why I feel honored to do anti-racism work and to hold these containers. It's not to berate, it's not to bring down, it's to really get free.
Yeah, it's to liberate.
It's really for real.
Because, okay, I live in Texas. Texas was a Confederate state. Texas is still extremely committed to these ideals. And what I notice is I notice a lot of really very ill people, people who use food to comfort themselves and are obese and unwell and have medical problems. I'm quite certain of it, who are disconnected from their bodies, living from just their minds, who spend a lot of time arguing back and forth with each other instead of like resolving conflicts and having a conversation. You know, there's a lot of substance abuse. There's a lot of alcoholism. There's a huge homelessness population in Austin, huge homelessness population. And there's just a lot of intolerance. And when we have that experience, and people talk a lot about the empath and the narcissist, but the narcissist just wants to avoid taking responsibility and feeling uncomfortable things. It's somebody whose emotional capacity has been turned off in order to avoid recognition of truth that's coming through right in your face, right? And when we cannot admit our mistakes, we cannot move through them. We cannot heal. And then we get trapped in these cycles. And so, yeah, like the person whose parent totally lied. What else could you do in a child's body except learn how to go to fantasy and disconnect from what you're witnessing and somehow gaslight yourself into a story that makes it all okay, that you go to church on Sunday and they say, thou shalt not kill. And yet you see your family killing people in brown bodies, brown and black bodies. You know, you have to somehow reconcile your faith that you say that you follow, your Christian faith with your Bible, with what's actually happening in your family system. And that's where gaslighting comes from, because gaslighting is the mind's tool to protect you from the realization of the harm that you're actually causing. And that's what has to be overcome in order to heal. And so many times I've gone through as you know, Curtrice, there's been times I have been so frustrated, I like to shake a person, you know, and that doesn't help. That's not good energy, because that just causes people to feel scared and like, oh, I'm already scared. I'm already uncomfortable. Now she wants to shake me. Not the best approach. But my frustrations also, there's been so many people that say they're thought leaders and spiritual guidance, and they're avoiding this conversation. And that really deeply bothers me, because these are people that other people follow, you know, they listen to and they follow. And I think it's just, I guess what I desire is radical self-accountability, radical trust in the process of becoming present with our ancestry's choices and our own complicity with it without even realizing what was going on. And also radical self-love, like not tearing ourselves down for something we inherited and something that's been in the background as a program. If we turn and face that program, we have so much power to change it, which is ironically all that Black and brown people are asking. They're not asking for vengeance. They don't want vengeance. When you come through that much torment, the last thing you want to do is go turn it around on somebody else. You just want it to stop. That's it. You just want it to stop. Take a look in the mirror, see what's going on, face yourself and heal, so we can all stop this false whiteness matrix storyline that's been going on for generations.
And, you know, it's even deeper too, Carrie. Like, I love what you're saying, like that is the radical nature, especially in the thought leader community. It's a deep invitation, wanting to see them move through in a very raw and genuine way. But it's interesting because, you know, the conversation easily falls down into what Black and brown people want. But it is expanding now, because we're now able to see, and this is just, I believe, because the veil is thinner and consciousness is rising, that it really is harmful to people in white bodies. Like you said about how people look in Texas. And I know that even in the spiritual communities, being so deeply in these communities where I'm usually like the only Black person or one or two or whatever that is, I don't have the deep desire to really delve into other cultures like they do. So that is also us looking for an identity. A part of it is spiritual tools, but on some level, I can feel my bloodline, even from the being from the ghetto, right? Like you could see a person addicted to drug, a Black person addicted to drugs on the corner at the liquor store, and you can still see the tribal energy in that being. And that is what white people have to come and get for themselves, the truth of who they are, breaking through that system, because that system in itself is a thief. So it's not just what is happening to other people. It's like, how is it impacting your own culture? Like you said about, and you really, I love how you broke that down about the narcissist, this energy of having to make up stories or lie about things or look good, which has infected us as a society to be perfect. And you see that heavily permeated in the white community. It doesn't mean things aren't happening. It's just behind closed doors. So there's so much that's happening. And to hold that in your skin, that's when the warrior in me starts to even come up like, okay, wait a minute. It's robbing white people too, right? You know, it came to this whole piece of like, wait, she's not free. Like, even though the husband is protecting and providing, he's also toxic and abusive. And you have to be quiet because and make it look like he's the leader or the community. Like, okay, wait, what's happening? Right. And so it's like an energy in that at a spiritual level that we didn't come here to play that game with this matrix. We didn't come here to walk on the earth in that way. We're here for everybody's freedom. Right. And that means coming for the program of whiteness. It means breaking that down so that all beings may know who they are, right? And coming through. And so once we get that piece, that is what it is. And so when I speak to like, okay, my next workshop is the shadow of whiteness, looking at the wound of whiteness, because we're able to look at it now. We want to look at it now. That's the type of community that I am cultivating. We want that because we know that we are not this. Right. And like the thought leaders, the spiritual leaders, and all these other people that are in white bodies, like it's our time. The time wasn't safe for us before, for our messages that are more transcendent or sacred to bring in. But this is our time to guide and heal through the deepest medicine. And looking at whiteness as that's not who I am. That's what I was born into. But I am the I am. And I just happen to be in this body. And the last piece when you were sharing too, the shame that comes up, there's a lot of shame with being Black and brown too. And the system continually tells you you should feel ashamed. It wasn't until I started doing this work that I've gotten to this level of indoctrination of that loving myself so deeply and my people, like every aspect, welfare queens, the crackheads, all of it is me. The Black excellence, the wisdom, the scholars, all of it is mine. And I have no shame for being an uneducated population or coming from that or the strife of what we've been through. Why would I feel shame over poverty? And you don't feel shame for oppressing? And us as a society would look up and pedestal a community that has harmed and then shame the ones who don't have. It becomes a societal sickness, a capitalism. It's just all of it. We have to look back at ourselves and say, what am I considering value? Do I want to be rich? Wait, let me look at the rich for a minute. Are they rich? And that's why I love to use the word rich instead of wealthy, because to me, wealthy people, values are aligned with their heart, have a balanced life, who honor all beings, right? You're in this place of compassion, benevolence, and honor and reverence. So we want to become wealthy people no matter where our economic status is. So this is the reclamation era, in my opinion, Carrie. I feel on fire about that.
No, I love what's coming through you. It's very inspiring. And I'm totally aligned with that. I feel like my own awakening in this body was when I went about, richness versus wealth, was when I went to Peru and I visited with the medicine people and I saw how they live. And not only did I see how they live economically, which we would classify like literally my REI outfit and my backpack and my boots was worth more than their home.
Wow.
And they had wealth and I was in poverty in my soul. They had wealth in their spirit, in their heart, in their community, in their connection with Mother Earth. And I was impoverished in myself. And I saw their wealth. I saw their true wealth. And I decided I wanted to have that true wealth more than any kind of material or money or anything like that. Like it didn't matter to me. What I wanted was true wealth. And that's why I study with the Indigenous, because the Indigenous are in touch with the truth. They're in touch with the true wealth, the true prosperity of soul, of spirit, of nature, of Gaia. That's what they're in touch with. And they're not seduced by, in general. I mean, some do slip off and get seduced. I mean, they're not impervious, but mostly they maintain that wisdom. And so I have brought that back here, right, to my Western civilization and my Western house as I practice being a healer in their tradition and their lineage, and then working through the layers of dismantling the power and control that I have given to this materialism structure that is false and that is based in making you afraid of not having or getting in trouble or losing. It's just like there to provoke fear at you in so many levels. When your true abundance, once you know yourself in truth, can never be taken from you ever. Even your life could be taken, but your true abundance would remain. And so that is what I feel like this time is also about. It's about people in all bodies reclaiming the truth of what is true wealth. And, it's funny because when I look at, the external happenings, in our society and government in the United States, for example, and I see these white men playing their role and playing Monopoly, and it feels like Highlander, like there can be only one, and so they're like competing over who's going to have the most toys because he who has the most toys wins. It's like, who's going to win this Monopoly era? And I could care less. I feel like I'm at the family gathering where, the two guys are still battling it out over the Monopoly game and they're trying to like win and get every, because I have to have all of your stuff in order to win. I have to have everything in order to feel like a winner. And meanwhile, the rest of us are like, the hooch in this room is freaking stanky. Like it's nasty, toxic, stanky, disgusting. You're showing us what's on the inside of you and it ain't much. And we're really just done. We're just done with this game. We're sick of it. We want to go for a nice hike in nature, go play charades or play pretty much any other game, anything but Monopoly. We just want to play something else as a family. And these guys are like dragging it out. And if you've ever had a holiday gathering where somebody's doing that, you're really annoyed, because they're completely unaware of how much they're ruining the entire family gathering by staying so
focused. The gathering part, right? So
yeah. They're like, or like the latest version is the video games. And so not to harp on anybody who's like completely obsessed with video games, but that's like the next genre of how to disconnect from your actual life is by feeling empowered by gaining Pac-Man points. And I know that's a simplification of what's happening, but it's such a disconnect from our humanity. It's such a disconnect from the infinite potentials that are available in every single moment when we're connected to our true abundance. And, I feel so impassioned for the young white men because I have two of them, as you know. And so one of my sons has really struggled with being a white person, a white male, and has really tormented himself. And I know that he's not the only one. And so I also just want to say to any moms out there, I see you, I feel you, I understand. And we're all coming in at this time on the planet to make our own personal peace with the last cycle, the Piscean age. And we get to make that own peace within ourselves. And it might look like destruction. It might look like self-destruction. It might look like martyrdom. It might look like greed. It could look like any of the 7 dragons. It could be really hard to witness. Yeah. And it's not going anywhere until we move the energy.
True. That is what I see.
We have to move the energy. We've got to learn how to heal that ancestry that lives in our bones and in our teeth and those past lives we had. And you were talking about the 7 generations. One of my ancestors, And also my past life self was on the Trail of Tears as a Cherokee, because I'm part Cherokee. I'm also Celtic and Norwegian and a lot of other things, right? Saxon, Anglo-Saxon. Yeah. And so my Cherokee ancestor, 7 generations ago. And so place yourself on the Trail of Tears. And the choice he made to have his daughter marry an Anglo-Saxon, because in the Cherokee tradition, we make our enemies into family.
Interesting.
Because we know that's the only way to heal. And look how many interracial couples, like I have an interracial relationship. Every time I go out in Texas, I see, maybe it's just because I'm focused on it and my reticular activating system is super, tuned into it, but I'm always seeing interracial couples. I'm always seeing.
There's a rise for sure. Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing it everywhere. And I feel like it's here for us at this time. It's here for us to heal, to realize that no matter what role our ancestors played, no matter what role we played before we woke up to it, we're all part of the system. And it's our opportunity now to put down the roles, to see the system for what it is, to see that system of inequity, of classifying people based on their attributes or their ancestry, of putting somebody above another person, having a hierarchy, and of withholding and hoarding and not sharing, and in being me-centric and narcissistic and totally mental bound and not connected with your body and your heart. We see what that reaps.
Yeah.
We see what that reaps.
Yeah. And so the work comes back to the self. It always comes back, what we're talking about, being rich and feeling wealthy and activating those codes. It comes from a place of peace. Right. And I'm not like one of those hippie spiritualists who don't like things, because I like things. I plan to have even more things and make an impact on a huge scale. But I have such a peace within me that I'm not in the rat race, or I don't need to do the underhanded thing to make sure I win. Right. Those type of competitive energies that I see now, even like when the DEI thing went away, it was just kind of like, I kept saying, are we in a competition? Are we at war? Who are you at war with? Or why does it seem like, and this is on the collective level, civilian level, like, who are y'all at war with? Because I don't feel like I'm at war. There's no reason for it. Not here within this country. I don't see it, but I feel like people are making division and war-centric ideologies. And so, but even when I look at this, the places that I do see supremacy or seeing this greed and capitalism, when I look energetically at these people, you can see like this emptiness, like this hungry ghost energy, that there is never going to be enough unless there is an awakening. Even if I have all the money that I want to run the country, and even when I do that, I'm going to go run the ocean. Like, I just got to I need to have everything, like, how could you have like all the money and it's just not enough because you're trying to feel something? And that's what supremacy is in itself. And this is why I always say that it robs people in white bodies, because it seeks to move things on the outside in the circumstances to position a people or give them identity and things to feel proud of, and something to make them feel like I am someone, when that work has to come from within. Right. And so as long as you keep manipulating this outer thing and I'm not doing any work within myself, I don't even know there is work to do within myself, that I'll never have that strong sense of knowing. Right. And that is like what you said at the gathering. It's like, we just want to talk, we want to gather. That's a peace. That's a strong sense of knowing. And that's what these children are looking for that are in white bodies. They want to know who they are. And when they look at their history, like, I'm not that. And then we empower them and say, okay, so what will you create? What is your legacy? How do you start to infuse the blood? What are you activating? You have codes. You have power. Right. And it's a powerful timeline to be in. Like I said, no different than being from, Black and brown communities. We can say, oh, my goodness, look what happened. And then we get to say, OK, now how do I inform this timeline? None of us here are victims. We're not here to just lay down at the feet of the system. And you got to be really careful, because it seeks to weaken you. It seeks to disempower, to make you feel like you don't have hope, that it's just always going to be this way. But if we were born, that was intentional. You've come for a reason, right? You're tuned in here for a reason. We're in these bodies for a reason, intentional. And so that kind of brings me back to thinking about our community, the spiritual community, and how they avoid the ancestral work that is connected to racism. And I want to say that really clearly. When they do all the work of other ancestral codes and curses like poverty and sexual suppression, like we have huge communities of liberating ourselves through sexuality, coming out of religion, remembering that we are God realized, all these different healings and classes. And for some reason, they don't seem to think that they inherited like violence and racism and supremacy in their blood. And so, not to call judgment, but to really call awareness to, of course you did. Just like I talked about my grandmother and what it took for me to come out of a pattern of just dropping out of high school and just having babies and doing nothing. The world doesn't expect nothing of me. There's nothing on TV telling me to do anything, to be anybody. So, okay, this is just what's happening around me. But you have to, when it's presented to you, you have a choice to awaken or to continue that ancestral pattern of averting your eyes, of turning your head, or pretending it's not like that. It's not there. And when I tune into white people, like the ancestors, the times were different. They didn't have what we have now. Just like Black people, like we all have to collectively see that we're living in a time that we have power through technology and community. We can be held, we can go deep together. They didn't have that back then. So to fall in line with these programs were easier. We have a sacred invitation. And anyone listening in, I just implore you to find community to hold you in this work, and that you can move through the hard part so that you really, more than anything, reclaim yourself and your own power and your own sovereignty. And you start to recode your own bloodline, leave your own legacy, and just you becoming the truth of who you are. And the biggest push there is moving through survival consciousness. If there is equality, can I eat? Do I feel special enough? What is it that I am consciously or unconsciously receiving from the current dynamics and paradigms that I may be complicitly, whether you know it or not, supporting that? And that's deep work. That is the deepest work. And that's why I have so much compassion and passion to hold space for this, because I know that I feel like this is the invitation for us right now as a collective. This is our collective liberation. Without white people going deep and Black and brown people going deep in the healing, and white people coming into the awakening, and then us collectively looking at this system from capitalism all the way down to how separation consciousness is stealing and draining our energy and our resources and keeping us in illusion, we'll stay in a cycle. An Aquarian age is not to let any president, any government come in and do all things from us. We are in a co-creative relationship right now. So whatever's happening at the government level is meant to trigger and activate new conversations. They're counting on us. They would never say this, but at a higher level, they're counting on us to call them into right relations. Because one thing I can say, and I know this isn't a political call, but I really want to talk about how I see so deeply when I look at the current administration, like, okay, you have plans and ideas to run a business, but you're not high conscious, right? You don't have all the information. And that is, none of us do. So we can never say like, oh, okay, you guys got it. Okay, you go ahead. No, you're supposed to be in diversity. You're supposed to co-create. Like, okay, yeah, your husband may know how to do this, but you have to also come in and say, hey, what about this way? It's our job to bring in the heart, to bridge the practical, the rational with right relations and honor. It can be done. It's not meant to just go back and be maidens, no matter what your gender is, and just allow things to happen. And it's really deep. Wait, I'm kind of on a tangent. I just want to say this part right here is coming through. I remember I dated a guy who happened to be wealthy and white and conservative. This was years ago, before I even really understood politics, or at that time in my life, I didn't know really what he was saying. But I remember I had an issue with a landlord, and his response was so violent. It was him. He had 3 brothers. They were really wealthy. They had done really well for themselves in life. And in that, it was to protect me. It wasn't like, and he's a great, he's a good guy. He has some programming going on. His intentions, but he doesn't have all the information. So in that relationship and the context of that conversation, I had the opportunity to say, or I could just email her, or no, that wouldn't be right. Like, I didn't just say, oh, okay, well, you take care of it the way that you do. He's coming from one, set of values and ideologies. And then I have mine, and they were meant to collide. And he would get quiet and go, mm, hmm. Okay, well, let me know how it goes. Right. Like, but what if, and like, not to condemn, like he thought, well, this is how I protect you, is to say all these vile things about how I'll do all these things and use my power and make sure she's treating you right. And so we have to watch that type of energy. Instead of saying, I'm like, oh, you're a crazy person, I became the invitation to, or we can look at it this way. And now we can kind of weave something together that feels rational and honorable. And we're still, taking up for ourselves and making things happen.
Yeah, I love that. And, when you were saying that about his response, I was thinking, well, yeah, of course, because it stems from how our European ancestry learned how to resolve conflict is by force. And actually, my husband and I have been watching, because my mom recommended we watch this show, Peaky Blinders. If you guys have never seen it, it's about England and Irish and all these, and his gang, Peaky Blinders. And it's like 6 seasons, and it's like, wow, that's how my ancestors solved problems, right? Because I have ancestry from there. And I was like, yeah, it makes perfect sense. He's like, we'll just go beat the crap out of somebody, and get violent in order to resolve the conflict. And that's part of this patriarchal thing, is like wanting to get the power, because the power was always kept up here away from you. You were told, you don't have divine blood, so you're not the king, and everybody else is a peasant. And so you have to scramble around on the ground to get scraps. So they start to scramble around, and then they scramble around other people. And so it's a very violent ancestry that was based in survival, was based in disconnection from the earth, was witch hunts, all that was happening to disempower people from their natural connection with the earth, from their right relationship, to sustain this power model. And that was happening all over Europe. So it's like the vestiges of that are showing up right now in front of our eyes. If you take a look, you look at social media, you guys, or you just see what's going on. It's this power grab. It's like this idea that there's elite people, and then there's everybody else who are like pigs and slop. And then within the pigs and slop, they try to separate us by skin color and divide us and make us fight each other. That's the whole thing. And so what's most egregious here is that nobody at a soul level, nobody wins. Nobody's winning. No. Are we gaining wisdom? Yes. Are we winning? No. We're having an experience.
I don't know. I think that's a choice. I don't think everybody's becoming wiser.
Well, not everybody's getting wiser, but those of us who are paying attention are taking everything. Like if you're listening to this broadcast, you're one of the ones paying attention because you're curious. You want to know, especially if you hung out with us this long through this conversation. And it's so important that you do, because lean in. This is the last thing I wanted to share is like, don't shy away from seeing it. And also don't let yourself get sucked into it. It's very important to notice what draws you in, that hooks your attention, that makes you want to go down a tunnel and waste hours on that. And what things do you just disconnect and go, nope, I'm out. This is boring. I don't want it. And, so I'm referring to, in this case, most recent example is the Kendrick Lamar Super Bowl. And if you haven't seen the halftime show, go watch it. And if you're in a white body, notice what happens. Like, do you immediately get it? Or do you feel kind of like there's like a wall here? Because I felt I'm in this work, Curtrice, I'm in this work. I had a wall. I literally became aware of a wall in my mind preventing me from hearing his words. I saw the visuals. I saw the bigger picture, but I wanted to hear it. I wanted all the words.
Thank you for sharing that. Is that what it is? Or is it because we speak AAVE? And in that, especially in a rap, like the tongue becomes very like fat. Like it's a very, and that's what I thought that like what I love that you're sharing that, because a lot of people had resistance. And I thought it was just when your ear is in tune, because when I notice when I'm around my friends who are white, like, my close friends, I can't speak to them the way I speak to my family. They literally do not understand me. If my tongue like goes into like AAVE while we're cooking or something, what did you say? What did you say? What did you say? And I'm like, oh, let me put an R on that. Like, let me, so that they can hear. So they call that code switching, but it's actually necessary if unless you're going to sit there all night and say, I said blue, it was blue. You know what I mean? And do that. So I wonder, Carrie, that's really deep.
It's really important. And what you just said about how you handle it in yourself, I want to highlight and just take a breath, everybody, if you're in a white body, because I love you. But we've been conditioned to expect that other people cater to us to help us to understand, when actually this whole time, Black and brown people have had to, for survival, understand us and how we think. When you realize that, you'll kind of get why Kendrick Lamar did not cater to us, to white Americans' expectations. You'll get why he didn't do that. Is because it's time for us to lean in and deal with this wall and clean out our ears and learn to hear other languages, Spanish, other languages. What did they say? And lean in and listen in a new way and not expect them to speak our language. That's
without you.
It's like it's a reciprocity. Deep. And it's been one way for so long. It's leaning the other way now. So get used to it. If you felt excluded, if you felt like this message not for me, hey, guess what? That's how we've made other people feel. And that's something for us to feel. Exclusion. Wow. So I'm just going to say, let this open you up to a huge revelation around how much more there is to discover and know about the world. When we move into this new realm, there's so much more that we can learn.
Sorry, that is what that felt like when they kept saying it was just not one white person was there. And that really is what that feeling was. Because I believe it was all Asians or Latin and it was just their culture. I'm like, oh, okay, that's Ireland. That's what they do. But then it was just something about Blackness, like in that dose was just like, whoa. But I just want to present something. We're going to end this because I think I'll do this on my podcast is around our language, though. It's a very complex, it's very like the conversation because we're born in America. So, we go to schools, we're going to learn to speak English like people speak it here. However, as a tribe and culturally and in our homes and in our communities, we speak AABE. That's what's most comfortable. That's what is desired and what we, it's like the home, it's tribal talk. And with that, it's interesting to just go into a group of white people who don't know AAVE. You could never get a real conversation because I love what you said, like we have our own culture. And I think because of our relationship with America, people don't know that this is literally our culture. We're literally choosing to speak this way. It's an emotive language. It's a language that allows us to emote and to moan and to move and to talk with our bodies and to move words in a way that's kind of rhythmatic than just like, hey, are you guys going? And say, hey, you going? Right? There's no going, right? That's the desire. Like that's we're tribal people. And so I just wanted like that conversation I feel is something that once people get in their mind like, oh, Black people actually have a culture. We're not white people doing whiteness bad. It kind of feels like we're like white people that get a bad report card. You don't walk right. You're too loud. You don't talk right. And so, no, we're actually tribal people. So we're going to cook different. We're going to speak differently. We're going to walk differently. We're going to do things different. And it's almost like, huh? Right. So that's really the struggle with culture right now. I feel that's the new conversation.
Yeah, exactly. I love that you said that. We're not like doing bad. We're not being white badly,
like we're just you failure. No, we're tribal. Some Black women are aggressive. Can be, and the truth is, I'm also tribal. So it's just innately I'm strong, and that's okay.
Yeah, and last word out because we could talk about this for hours. I gotta throw one more out of there. It's so ironic. It's hilarious to me actually that they're trying to replace DEI with merit, and to me, it's like the biggest way you're going to lose white America is because when you have a people that have been oppressed for as long as African American and brown people have been oppressed, and all the lessons and challenges and initiations that people with those conditions had to move through to be successful in this world, to compete in a world not designed for them. You're talking about people who are stronger, smarter, more resilient, more adaptable, and not entitled. And yeah, they have more merit in many contexts. So we got to get this going on, people. It's like actually key to survival here is to learn how to get past the entitlement, how to get out of this like white matrix, and how to start being a human being and relating with others. And that's the way of the future. And if you're not in that mode, it's going to be like the dodo bird, like it's just going to go. So I just encouraging everybody to do this work, become relatable, become New Earth relatable, and just lean into the work. Just if you haven't yet, lean into the work. And Curtrice is a great person to do it with. She's awesome, really understanding, empathetic, available. And I hope that you look her up. And the show notes, we'll have the link to Curtrice's, all of her offerings. Is there any last thing you want to offer to people on our way out the door?
This is really good. It was really organic. And I love that. No, but what you shared at the end around being a human being, I think that closes us up really well, because that's what these conversations are about. How do we become human? How can we relate to our identities in this world, but at the root, know the truth of who we are, which is an aspect of the divine, right? And stay rooted in that, integrated in that as we move through this physical world. And so, stay in our hearts, stay discerning, stay in your power. But once we move over into just being in the system, that's when we begin to lose, right? So thank you for that, being human.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. What a juicy, beautiful conversation. Really grateful for everybody who stayed with us for that. And I hope that you got some beautiful nuggets from it, some juicy golden nuggets, and definitely let us know, so leave a comment in the show notes, give us a rating on anywhere you find the podcast, and let us know what came up for you, what you want to own for your liberation. And so much love. So we're going to give you kisses on the way out. Here they come. Thanks for staying with us. Give us a like, give us a rating, give us a share. And here come your kisses. Bye,
everyone.
Bye, everybody. Love you so much. See you next week. Bye for now. Thanks, Curtrice. If you found even one gold nugget in this episode of Soul Nectar Show, will you do us a favor? Will you subscribe, like, and share this episode? Maybe even write a comment and let us know what you thought about it. We really, really want to engage with you at a much deeper level. Let's be part of community together. Have a great week, everyone. Bye for now. To dive in deeper to nourishing conversation, visit soulnectar.show.
Soul Nectar Show. Awaken, awake, show. Take a sip from the drip of nectar, from the source of who you are.